Two bottles of red Bordeaux. Same vintage, same grapes, one costs 15 euros and the other costs 1500. And the difference isn't the wine, not really. It's a tiny line of text on the label. A line that comes from classification system written down 170 years ago by a guy who never tasted a single bottle. Today, Bordeaux has 5 of these classification systems. They contradict each other, some never change, some change every 5 years. One of the most legendary regions in Bordeaux, Pomerol, refuses to have one classification at all. By the end of this video, you'll be able to look at any Bordeaux label and know exactly what you're paying for, so let's get into it. Quick context, and this matters, so stick with me. Bordeaux is enormous, about 110,000 hectares of vineyards, around 5,000 to 6,000 producers, and roughly 65 appellations. It's not one place, it's a federation of wine regions split by a river, the Gironde estuary. On the left bank, west of the river, you've got gravelly soils, Cabernet Sauvignon dominates, and you find appellations like Médoc, Pauillac, Saint-Julien, Margaux, and Grave. On the right bank, east of the river, clay and limestone soils, Merlot is king, and the famous names are Saint-Émilion and Pomerol. Now, here is the thing. These regions developed separately. Different soils, different grapes, different merchants, different cultures. So when classifications started popping up to rank the best wines, they didn't made one big system. They made several. Each region wanted its own. That's why there are 5 main classifications and they don't really talk to each other. A first growth in the 1855 system isn't the same as a Premier Grand Cru classé in Saint-Émilion. They are not comparable rankings. They are different conversations. Okay, so now we can dig in and let's start with the most famous one, the 1855 classification. The year is 1855, Napoleon III is throwing a massive party in Paris, the Exposition Universelle, basically the World's Fair, and he wants to show off French wine to the planet. He asked Bordeaux, give me a list of your best stuff ranked. Bordeaux's Chamber of Commerce kind of panicked, they didn't want to taste anything, it's too political, so they handed the job to the Syndicat des Courtiers, basically the wine brokers. And the brokers did something brilliantly lazy. They didn't taste either. They just looked at prices. For decades, brokers had been recording the prices each chateau got on the market. The most expensive wines, year after years, were obviously the most reputable. So the brokers ranked the chateau by historical selling price. The result? 60 red wines, almost all from the Médoc, plus one outlier from Grave, Château Aubryon. They split them into 5 tiers, called growth, or cru in French. At the very top, the first growth, the premier cru. Originally, there were 4, Lafite, Latour, Margaux, and Aubryon. Then below them, second growth, third growth, fourth growth, and fifth growth. 60 wines in total. Now, here is where it gets interesting. The 1855 list has barely changed in 170 years. It's almost frozen in time. There's been exactly one promotion in all that time in 1973, after 50 years of relentless lobbying by Baron Philippe de Rothschild, Château Mouton Rothschild got promoted from second growth to first growth. So today, there are 5 first growths, Lafite, Latour, Margaux, Aubryon, and Mouton. That's it. One change in nearly 2 centuries. This is, depending on who you ask, either the genius of the system or its biggest flaw. Some fifth growths today make wine that frankly outperform some second growths. For example, Château Langebage is a fifth growth that easily drinks like a second. Meanwhile, some third or fourth growths have coasted on prestige for decades. But the 1855 classification is not just for reds. It also classified the sweet white wines of Sauternes and Barsac. And here, there is an even rarer rank. At the very top of Sauternes sits Château d'Yquem, alone, in a category created just for it, Premier Cru Supérieur. Below it are 7 Premier Cru and 15 Deuxième Cru. So to recap the 1855 classification, 60 red wines from the Médoc plus 1 from Grave, ranked in 5 different tiers, and 27 sweet wines from Sauternes and Barsac in 3 tiers. One change since 1855, it was Mouton in 1973. It's based on historical price, not blind tasting, and, pay attention, it completely ignores Saint-Émilion, Pomerol, most of Graves, and that last point is why we need a second classification, so let's get into the Saint-Émilion classification. Saint-Émilion is on the right bank. Beautiful medieval town, UNESCO World Heritage Site, and makes wine based mostly on Merlot, blended with Cabernet Franc. And in 1855, Saint-Émilion got completely ignored. The reason for this is that Saint-Émilion was dependent of Libourne Chamber of Commerce, which was different from the Bordeaux Chamber of Commerce, so completely ignored from the 1855 classification. For 100 years, the producers of Saint-Émilion stewed about this. And in 1955, they finally created their own classification and made it the opposite of the 1855. Here is the key idea. The Saint-Émilion classification is revived every 10 years or so. Chateau can be promoted and Chateau can be demoted. It's alive, it's competitive. And, as we'll see, it's a little bit chaotic. There are 3 tiers in the Saint-Émilion classification. At the top, Premier Grand Cru classé A, the absolute summit. Below that, Premier Grand Cru classé B, and then Grand Cru classé. The current version of the classification came out in 2022. It's the 7th edition. And it has 2 chateaux at the top, A level, 12 at B, and 71 Grand Cru classé. 85 in total. But Saint-Émilion has known a little bit of drama recently. Of the 4 Premier Grand Cru classé A estates from the 2012 ranking, Cheval Blanc, Ozone, Angelus, and Pavie, 3 of them, the first 3, withdrew before the 2022 classification was announced. Why? Because the criteria had shifted. The classification was no longer just about wine quality, it now weighted things like marketing, wine tourism, architecture of your winery, social media presence. So Cheval Blanc and Ozone, 2 of the most legendary names in all Bordeaux, basically said, that's not what great wine is about, and walked away. So in 2022, only Château Pavie remained from the old A group, and 1 new chateau was promoted to join it, Château Figeac, after years of being considered unfairly overlooked. Today, if you see Premier Grand Cru classé A on the Saint-Émilion label, that's only 2 chateaux on the entire planet. And of course, Cheval Blanc, Ozone and Angelus are still making spectacular wines, they just don't carry the title anymore. One last thing about Saint-Émilion that confuses everyone, there are wines labeled simply Saint-Émilion Grand Cru. These are not the same as Grand Cru classé. Grand Cru without the classé is just an appellation rule, and basically if you make wine from Saint-Émilion, you can have it. So 200 estates qualify for it. It's a lower bar. Don't get tricked by the label and look for Grand Cru classé. So we have described 2 of the most famous rankings, but there are a few others that are worth to have a look to. Back to the left bank, but south of the Médoc, you've got Graves, named literally for its gravelly soils. This is the oldest fine wine region in Bordeaux. People were making serious wine here when the Médoc was still mostly swamp. But in 1855, only 1 Graves chateau got recognized, Aubryon. Everybody else got snubbed. So in 1953 and revised in 1959, Graves drew up its own classification and is the simplest of the bunch. There are no tiers. There is just 1 level, Grand Cru classé de Graves. 16 chateaux total. Some are classified for their red, some for their white, and some for both. You'll find estates like Aubryon, Domaine de Chevalier, Pape Clément, Smith-Olafite, for example. A few things to know. First, Aubryon is on this list even though it's already a 1855 first growth. It's the only chateau classified in 2 different systems. Second, almost all the classified Graves estates today fall into a sub-appellation called Pessac-Léognan, which was carved out in 1987. So if you see Pessac-Léognan on the label, you're in the classified Graves territory. And third, and this is unusual, Graves is classified for both reds and whites. The dry white wines from Pessac-Léognan, made from Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon, are some of the greatest dry whites in France. I absolutely love them. Chateaux like Domaine de Chevalier, Aubryon Blanc and Smith Lafitte makes whites that age for decades. The Graves classification has barely been touched since 1959, so like the 1855, it's basically frozen. Now, here's the thing nobody tells you. The 1855 classified 60 chateaux from the Médoc, but the Médoc has hundreds and hundreds of estates. So what about all the others? Were they just lost? That's where the Crus Bourgeois come in. The name dates back centuries. Bourgeois originally meant the wealthy citizen of Bordeaux who owned the vineyard land outside the city. The first formal classification was in 1932, but it's had a chaotic history, including being annulled by a court in 2007. So since 2020, it's been on a clean, modern footing, a classification that's revised every 5 years with 3 tiers, and the most recent edition of this classification came out in 2025. The 3 tiers are Crus Bourgeois Exceptionnel, the top, 14 chateaux in 2025, then Crus Bourgeois Supérieur, the middle, 36 chateaux, and Crus Bourgeois, the entry tier, with 120 chateaux. So it's a total of 170 estates across the 8 appellations of Médoc. Now, this is frankly where I send most people who want to drink seriously good Bordeaux without taking out a loan. Crus Bourgeois Exceptionnel from a great vintage often delivers like 80, 90, even more than the experience of a classified growth at maybe 20% of the price. Names to know: Château Félon-Ségur, Château Potensac, Château d'Arsac, Château du Taillan. 2 important things about the modern Crus Bourgeois system. First, there are no mandatory environmental and sustainability requirements. Crus Bourgeois Supérieur and Exceptionnel, so the 2 first tiers, need to hold a level 3 high environmental value certification. Second, every classified bottle has a QR code that lets you trace the wine right back to the estate. It's the most modern of all the Bordeaux classifications. Quick one before telling you about the last classification. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to go deeper in your understanding of Bordeaux wines, I have this beautiful map that you see on your screen. It's a beautiful poster that you can buy from us with all the Bordeaux appellations written on it. It's beautiful, I love the map. The link is in description. Let's get back to it. So now a quick mention of the lesser known 5th classification, the Crus Artisans du Médoc. These are the truly small estates, places where one person or one family grows the grapes, makes the wine and sell it themselves. No corporate ownership, no big consultant. The most recent edition is from 2023, it recognizes 31 estates. You will almost never see Crus Artisan wines outside specialty shops or directly from the property, but for a wine traveler, this is gold. Knock on the door, taste wines with the owner, leave with a few bottles you can't get anywhere else. I will put the link of the classification in description. It's very nice if you travel to Bordeaux. One last thing about the classification, I have to mention it because it drives wine students crazy. Pomerol has no classification. None. Zero. This is the tiny right bank appellation that includes Château Pétrus, arguably the most expensive Merlot on the planet, and Château Le Pin, which is also sometimes more expensive even than Château Pétrus. We are talking about thousands of euros per bottle, and officially on paper, they are ranked nowhere. The producers of Pomerol have always refused to create a hierarchy among themselves. Their attitude is essentially, the market knows, the drinkers know, we don't need a piece of paper. Okay, 5 classifications. Let's bring it home. If you remember nothing else, please remember this. The 1855 classification is Médoc Reds plus Sauternes Barsac sweet wines. Frozen in time, still the most prestigious classification, but debated. Saint-Émilion is the right bank's own system, updated every decade, currently a bit of a mess because 3 of the top 4 chateaux walked out. Graves and Pessac-Léognan has its own classification from 1959, the only one that ranks both red and white wines. Crus Bourgeois is your best value for money in the Médoc, refreshed every 5 years, modern and transparent. And finally, Pomerol doesn't bother with any of it. The honest truth behind this is that a classification is a starting point, not a verdict. The 1855 ranking tells you what was great in 1855. It doesn't tell you what's great now. Some classified growth underdeliver. Some unclassified estates make wines that beat them all. So the label is a clue. Your palate is the answer. If this video helped you make sense of all of this, do me a favor, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me. If you want to go deeper in your wine journey, join me in the Winemaker Show Academy. The link is in the description. I see you either in the next video or in the Academy.